Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is a companion video. What are companion videos? Well, I'm often glad that you asked. See, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday, we save the second half of the show to take your live questions. However, we don't always have time to get around to all the live questions that get sent in, especially since we just had 4 days of live questions all piling up, waiting to get answered. So what we do is we gather up those questions we didn't have time for on the show, and we address them here on companion videos. And that's what we're going to do right now. So let's jump right into it. The first one we're going to start getting caught up on comes for us from James Bondage, who writes, why do you think Quibi execs thought it was a good move to make it unavailable to watch on a TV? Can you imagine if Spotify could only be played through headphones? Wanted to watch Reno 911 at a friend's house, and we just gave up. Did this kill them? Listen, there are a number of things about Quibi that I don't get. Now, I said for a long time, I don't see this platform going anywhere. And they've spent a lot of money getting a lot of big name stars and all that kind of stuff. And it's an interesting concept, like the short form content. Interesting idea. Interesting idea. I never knew that it could work, but it was an interesting idea to try. I will never understand. I've heard them explain it a few times, and I still don't even know if they understand why. The decision to not make it available as a standalone app on a Roku or an Amazon Fire or an Apple TV or something that can only be watched on mobile. Can only be watched on mobile. What's the point of that? Like, I've never understood. Like, is it this idea that if you create the illusion of exclusivity, that somehow that gives the appearance of value? It's like, oh, you can only... I've never understood that move. It made no logical sense. There is no practical value or application or benefit to not being available on TVs. Now, I've heard people say there are ways to get it on your TV if you really want to, but why they made that approach, I've never understood. But ultimately, I don't think that's what killed them. I think that's what hurt them. And I think it was worth trying. I just think the concept of it, short form, little quick content, it was a neat idea to try, but I never really felt like the audience would go for it. So did it hurt them? Yes. Did it kill them? No. I just think the concept overall wasn't going to fly. Worth a try, but yeah, there's that. All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, James. All right. Next up. An anonymous viewer writes, introduce a little anarchy, upset, everybody's quoting the Joker today, upset the established order and then everything becomes chaos. I'm an agent of chaos. Oh, and you know the thing about chaos? It's fair. This quote speaks volume to our current times. I mean, to a degree, it does. I mean, somebody wrote in earlier about it, use the quote, the littlest nudge can send everything into chaos. This hasn't been the littlest nudge. It's been some pretty big, serious stuff that's been accumulating and mounting and festering for decades. That's boiling over. But yeah, I mean, it is a character who is ripe for our times, Anonymous. It definitely is. All right, Dan Ketchum writes, I want season 6 to end with Lucifer, season 6 of Lucifer. I want season 6 to end with Lucifer back sitting on the throne of hell. Then the camera pulls back to reveal Chloe on a throne next to him. I don't think that's the way they're going to go. I don't think a human can become the queen of hell, even if the king says so. So I don't think I think we're going to see Lucifer get out of his responsibilities in hell. I think Mazikeen. I think the way this show will end is that Mazikeen, even though a demon's not supposed to be able to do it, but I think Mazikeen is ultimately somehow, some way, they'll come up with a story loop that allows Mazikeen to become the queen of hell. I don't know that. Nobody's told me that, but that's my guess at this point. All right, next up. Adam writes, greetings from Malaysia. Dear John, Tenet will be releasing soon this year, but just to ask, what is your favorite Nolan film of all time? Mine has to be Memento, year 2000. Cheers. No, I've talked about that a lot. My favorite Christopher Nolan film, oddly enough, is not The Dark Knight, even though I love The Dark Knight. My favorite Nolan film is Insomnia. With Al Pacino, Robin Williams. I love that film. And it's, you know, you mentioned that most people don't even know what Christopher Nolan film, like don't even know that's a Christopher Nolan film. I actually love that movie. I love it more than most people. A lot of people don't give it the love I think it deserves, but yeah, my absolute favorite Christopher Nolan film is Insomnia. I love that movie. All right, Colin Robinson writes, smells like Updog in here. Of course, that is Colin Robinson, the character from What We Do in the Shadows, who tries to pull the old joke on the other vampires. Smells like Updog in here. What's up, dog? Not much, dog. What's up with you? God, I love that show. Derek Woodron writes, and send in a large tip. Thank you, Derek, for supporting the channel on that level. I appreciate that. Hey, John, just wanted to say thanks. As a black man in these times, your show, SCN, and work are the only constant things keeping my mind off the craziness of the world. I appreciate you, Rob, Aaron, Ray, Jonathan, and the community. Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. And yeah, listen, in recent days, I've taken criticism, and that's okay. I think criticism can be good, that I don't engage in a lot of politics talk on my show or world events. That's mostly because it comes from my core belief that I believe this type of show is meant to be an oasis from all the other things troubling us and our world. You know, that we need these pockets where we can escape out of, you know, the heavy stuff going on either in our personal lives or on a larger scale in our communities. Take a breath, talk about something else for a minute, refresh our minds a bit, and then go back and face the problems we're dealing with again with maybe a little bit of a fresher mind and maybe a bit of perspective. And I think a lot of the people come to watch my show trust in that. Now, earlier today, I did break that rule a little bit because there are some really extreme circumstances, including Robert, that are connected to my show. And so today I briefly broke my own rule. And I've received criticism. People think I should be talking more about that stuff. And while I respect that opinion, I just, there are many other places to go to hear about all the big events going on in the world. There are many places to go if you want to engage in that right now, this moment. I just think we need to have a couple that allow us an opportunity to step out of that for a minute, take a breath, talk about something else, talk about something that brings all of us joy, and then go back and face the problems again. So I appreciate that, Derek. Thank you so much for your words. I appreciate that. And here's hoping for better days for all of us, my friends. So thank you so much. And we're glad to have you here, dude. All right, next up, Curtis Lopez writes, did you watch the Lord of the Rings episode of Josh Gad's Reunited Apart? It was glorious, and Billy Boyd singing his song from Return of the King is what I needed. It moved me to tears, especially with what's going on today. I have not, but I've got it queued up on my YouTube app on my TV downstairs. Oh, I got that stuff all set up and ready to go. I've been waiting for that one. I love what Josh Gad is doing. This whole, where he's getting reuniting casts from different things to talk. I think it's a tremendous idea. I'm so glad he was able to pull it off. So no, I have not watched it yet, Curtis, but I'm very excited to watch it. And you just spoiled a little thing for me, but that's okay. Knowing that Billy Boyd's going to sing the song, that's cool. So not watching it yet, but I will soon. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, James O'Rourke writes, good morning, John. Glad to see you back. Well, it's good to be back, my friend. I recently posted a rare comment on the podcast Facebook group. I was wondering if you could read it for those who don't have access to it. If not, I understand. Thank you for all you do and stay safe. Well, I mean, the stuff on the Facebook group is meant for the Facebook group, and I can't run around and do errands and look up comments and quotes and stuff like that. But for those of you who don't know what James is talking about, we do have a Facebook group that's exclusively for our Patreon supporters. It's a very active group, and James is clearly a part of that. So thank you for, I'll go and check out that message myself later. Like, I'm on it almost every other day on the Facebook group in there. So I'll go and check that out, but thank you for sending that in, man. All right, next up, the Wakandan Forever writes, welcome back, John. When the kneeling starts, the healing starts. Paraphrasing. King T'Challa, why? Why? You were wrong. We let fear keep us from doing what is right no more. I cannot rest. I must right these wrongs. Yimbambe, hold strong, Wakandan forever. There's a lot of very applicable comments. And by the way, guys, you got to forgive me if it's about to get a little bit noisy in here, but it's like, in Canadian terms, it's like 35 degrees outside, which is like 98 or something here in the States. So it's pretty hot. I don't know if you can tell, I'm already sweating in here. So I'm going to turn on the AC. But yeah, there are a lot of good relevant quotes out of that movie that are very, very applicable for today for sure. All right, Jason Clark writes, out of all the epic moments in Endgame, my favorite moment is when Scott Lang comes back from the quantum realm and runs to see his daughter. Cassie is still alive. The relief and confusion on his face is a great emotional scene. Paul Rudd at his best. You know what? I think you raise a great point. Of all the great, wonderful moments in Endgame, many of which happen in the last part of the movie, we forget about some of the real gems that happen earlier. Whether it's things like Clint going back to the farmhouse and hearing his wife and kids in the house, whether it's, other stuff like that. But the Lang thing, you're right. When he's walking around the town after that rat luckily tripped over the button that let him out of the Quantum Realm. And he's piecing things together. When he goes back to the house to see if his daughter is alive, that is a wonderful moment in the movie. That's a wonderful moment. And you're right. I think that is one that gets overlooked because of all the huge spectacle, amazing spectacle stuff that happens in the last part of the film. That is a scene that does get overlooked. So I think you're right on to point that one out. Thanks for sharing, man. All right. Craig Stratton writes, was meant to be going to New Zealand this week, but it was canceled for obvious reasons. So I'm doing a Middle Earth marathon instead. When you can't actually go to New Zealand, Lord of the Rings are a good substitute. Yeah, it's funny because my buddy Ryan is actually over visiting right now. And he had this big, him and his sister were supposed to go on this, I think they were supposed to go to Ireland, not New Zealand, but I think they were supposed to go to Ireland, and they had this big trip planned for months and months and months. And then the pandemic hit and it canceled their things. I mean, first world problems, there are much worse things in the world, but you know, on a personal level, yeah, that's got to be incredibly disappointing. But hey, man, you're making lemonade out of lemons and going back to revisit Lord of the Rings. Never a bad decision, my friend. All right. Morality in Film writes, if Gotham erupted into chaos and Batman had to deal with armed looters, would he be justified for Batman to batarang to kill? I don't know what batarang to kill means. If he used a batarang to kill, I don't know. See, to me, Batman in movies has always killed when necessary. He doesn't go out to kill people, but if he's in if he's in combat and, you know, his life's on the line, he'll kill fools in movies. It's happened many, 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 many times in the Batman movies, over and over and over. A lot of people like to pretend the Ben Affleck one doing it was the first time it's ever happened. What? Yeah, guess what? It's happened in the comic books too, but whatever. We're not going to get in that old debate again. But I think the larger question of would Batman ever kill? I believe in the movies, the answer has been obviously yes. And in the comics, the answer has been yes. So that's my feeling on that. All right. An anonymous viewer writes, honestly, John, I love the show and have been around since the AMC days, but I'm disappointed in how you haven't publicly stood by Robert Meyer Burnett. I pretty much have. In this tough time, he made a mistake, but he doesn't deserve this. I wish you luck, and I'll be back when Rob is allowed back on. All right. So first of all, let me be very clear. There's two things I want to be very clear about. All right. Two things I want to be very, very clear about. One, I have stood by Rob. Rob and I are having lunch. Rob and I were on the phone many times last night. We've been on the phone today. And Robert Meyer Burnett will be back. He knows I wholeheartedly think what he tweeted was irresponsible and dangerous. And he thinks that too. He didn't at the moment because he was enraged, he was angry, he was becoming defiant, he was digging his heels in with the people he was engaging with online. It got bad, but then he took a breath. He realized, looked again at what he wrote. He realized it was dangerous. It was irresponsible and dangerous. In a world where we have a bunch of idiots looking for any excuse to pick up a gun and shoot people, it was a dangerous thing to write. And he knows I feel that way, but he also knows that, yeah, I think what he did was dumb, and I got his back anyway. Because he knows what he did was dumb. So yeah, be very, very clear. I do support Robert. I do. Without approving of what it is he did, but he doesn't approve of what he did. But I support him. That said, and I can't say this clear enough, please never come back to my show. I have no time or interest in somebody who thinks they can hold their viewership of my show hostage by giving me a list of demands. Of what? I simply don't need that. I don't need that. So thank you for writing that in. I do have Robert's back. Please never come back. I don't need viewers here on my show who are like, do this or else I don't watch your show. Okay, bye. Bye. So yeah, so I do have Rob's back and I don't want you back. So there's that. All right. Morality in Film also writes, if Batman killed Gotham citizens with zero accountability and instead of investigating, the police chose to actively work with Batman, how do you think Gotham citizens would feel seeing the bat signal shining from the top of the police station? Again, you're trying to drag me into you're using a comic book allegory to try to drag me into a political conversation about today's things. And I'm just not going to do that. For reasons I just explained a few minutes ago. That's not what we're here to do, and I'm not going to get dragged into that. I appreciate you being curious about it and curious about my opinion on it, but it's just not something I don't think anybody wants to hear about, and it's not why people come to this channel, and it's not why I do this show. Like, I certainly never started this show so I could get involved in political discussions. That's not why I started this show. And so I appreciate you asking, but I'm going to have to respectfully decline to get dragged into it. All right, the Sock writes. Oh, yeah, by the way, Corporal Upham is a coward. Him shooting the German coward doesn't make up for anything. He still gets ribbon, and Milish die and Miller gets shot. Only jumped in once it was pretty much over and let them rest of them go again. Is that an Inglourious Basterds reference? I think that's an Inglourious Basterds. I think that is. Hold on a second. Let me look it up here. Inglourious. The Inglourious Basterds 2009 edition, not the original. I don't know if I feel like that's an Inglourious Basterds reference, but I can't remember. You got to give me some context, Sock. If you're going to write something, you got to give me a little bit of context. EJ writes, 1 of 3. Hey, John, I love the show. I've been watching for a long time. Never had enough money to tip. Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate just being a viewer. That's awesome, man. Thank you for that. But always watched. I was in high school at the time Avengers came out. And when they announced this movie of a little comic book called Guardians of the Galaxy, I wanted to learn more about them. So I looked on YouTube and found your show. As you introduced this new person on your show to talk about them, John Schnepp, have been hooked ever since. Loved the Heroes days with you, Schnepp, and Robert Meyer Burnett. They were the best. However, for a while after high school, I was in a weird spot, not knowing what to do with my life, and you were also dealing with the leave and everything. So I distanced myself from the show for 2 years ago. I started a current job at Ford and kept up with the John Campea Show since. It helps at work. It helps at work too. Well, awesome, dude. Seriously, thanks so much. And it is fun how there's a couple of big events that I often get told people started watching the different content I do. One is my Man of Steel review. That's usually a big one. Another one is my first Avengers review. Another one is when I brought on John Schnepp to start talking about this little unknown property that a lot of people didn't know about called Guardians of the Galaxy. I reached out to a friend of mine saying, do you know anybody? Because I'd read a little bit of Guardians of the Galaxy, but I didn't know much. So I reached out to somebody I knew. And I was like, do you know anybody that knows a lot about Guardians of the Galaxy? And he's like, well, actually, yeah, I know this guy. His name's John Schnepp, and he knows a lot about Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm like, cool. Can you put me in touch with him? So he put me in touch with this guy named John Schnepp, and I asked him if he'd like to come on to the AMC show and talk about Guardians of the Galaxy. And we just had a great on-screen chemistry. We really liked working together. And the rest was history. So that is a big thing. So thanks, EJ, for being around for that long. Thank you for being a part of the show. And congrats on your job at Ford. That's awesome. We had a big Ford plant. I think it's still there, up near where I lived in Canada. It was in Oakville. There was this giant Ford plant in Oakville. I think it's still there. I don't know. It's been a lot of years since I've been there. But yeah, good on you, man. And thank you for being here, EJ. I appreciate that, dude. All right, next up. Diamond Dog's Puppy writes. 1 of 2. Good day, John. Good day, Diamond Dog. Glad to see you're doing well in the midst of this terrible crisis going on. It's scary times, man. I'm maintaining by literally taking it day by day. Living in New York City is no joke. I got to imagine that's no joke right now. Things are heavy in New York City. From COVID to looting, 2020 has been a half a year of madness to remember. I also want to say I finally became a Patreon of yours over the weekend. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Feels great to be further entrenched in the movie community. Love guys, love each other always. Well, thank you so much, man. And yeah, living in LA, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in LA, clearly. But I from everything that I'm seeing, it looks like even more madness going on in New York. That just looks crazy. Like, obviously, you guys were hit so hard by the coronavirus. Obviously being hit very hard by the protests, and that part has been hit pretty hard here in LA as well. But yeah, man, take care of yourself. Be smart, be kind, take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, and especially in a city like New York, man. So all my best, dude. So thank you so much for being here, man. All right, Sir Ivan Bennett writes, Hey, John, saw your Man of Steel video and can say that I'm impressed. Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. We're very proud of that video. We put a lot of heart and passion and soul and work into that video. I appreciate your perspective, even though I may not 100% agree. That's the purpose of films, man. We're not meant to agree. But that's life. I like the movie, but I feel like the idea of the Codex and why it was implanted in Kal-El wasn't made clear enough. In fact, I like the idea of most everything in Man of Steel, but feel like it maybe wasn't delivered in a way that was emotionally resonant for myself. Like, I understand it, but I didn't feel the emotion in it. Maybe I'm a little dead inside. No, just because an element of a movie doesn't impact you in a certain way that maybe it impacts some other people, that doesn't mean anything about you. That just means it didn't impact you that way. The Codex stuff, to me personally, was key and profound, and it gave more meaning and narrative purpose to a lot of the stuff that went on in the movie. You know, the Codex... One of the things that I say in the video that I think most people overlook is the Codex being infused into Kal-El. Because the traditional Zod Superman enmity has been based on, I hated your daddy and so I hate you. You know, it's been that. By implementing the issue of the Codex into the story, it gives way better narrative purpose to why Zod has it in for Superman. Yeah, he's Jor-El's son. He's not happy about that. But also, he sees getting Superman means the salvation of his people. So it adds a new layer of deep, rich narrative purpose that I really loved. And of course, it was Jor-El not only trying to save his son, he was trying to save the future, the possibility of the future of the Kryptonian race. Because the ruling council of Krypton weren't listening. So he had to steal the Codex and get it off-world, and the safest place for it was embedded into his son. Because if he just put it in the pod, Pa Kent could have found the pod, oh, there's a baby, and what's this skull thing? Oh, let's take it to the doctors and find out what it is. And it gets picked apart and destroyed and lost in some Indiana Jones warehouse in a wooden crate and whatever. But instead, he knew he was sending Kal-El to a place where he would be a god. And he embedded the Codex in his son. So, but that's the impact it had on me. That doesn't mean it's going to have the same impact on you. And that doesn't mean your perspective isn't as proper or valid as mine. Not at all. Movies are subjective. They hit us in different ways. And that's just the way it hit you, my friend. Nothing wrong with that. All right. Wakanda Forever writes, I am sending this in early. Rob, if you were on the show today, I saw your apology and know it was heartfelt. We are all angry. Every one of us as human beings right now. I watch you when you're on the show every week. We will all get through this together. That's kind words. And I'm sure Robert, who watches these videos, I'm sure Robert will appreciate that very much. Wakanda Forever. Thank you for sending that. All right. Ben Rayner writes, hey, John, hope you're staying safe and glad to have you back. I am, and I am also glad to be back. Thank you. The last few days, I've been watching Fistful of Dollars and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Some good Clint Eastwood there. I've been loving them. Clint was such a badass. Do you have any favorite Westerns like that? Listen, my all-time favorite Western to this day is another Clint Eastwood movie. It's just of a different era. It's Unforgiven. I really do feel like Unforgiven is the greatest film of all time. And with a lot of other genres, when you're going to talk about what is the greatest film of that genre of all time, other than comic book movies, because that's fairly modern, you feel the need to go back further in time, especially with Westerns, because you want to go back to the heyday of the Western. But I honestly feel like when you look at all the Western films ever made, I really think Unforgiven is just the greatest film of the genre ever. I really feel that way. And there are many great ones for sure. But when you look at Unforgiven and what Clint Eastwood, as not just the star, but the director of the film, what he did and was able to accomplish, it is a riveting character piece. Oh God, that movie's good. God, that movie's good. And so for me personally, another Clint Eastwood, just in a different era, my favorite one of all time is Unforgiven. Thanks for writing that in, man. And that's a good watch fest for you, dude. All right. Simon Blakemore writes, hey, John and Rob, I was wondering, with the Snyder Cut coming out, does this mean directors will have a bit more of a say in franchise films? Nope. Nope. And remember, this is Warner Brothers not re-releasing this movie. They decided, because remember, Deborah Snyder, Zack Snyder's wife, and one of the producers of, all the stuff that Zack Snyder does, she said directly in that Hollywood Reporter interview, when they announced that the Snyder Cut was going to be going to HBO Max, she said directly, this was never going to be on the big screen. Never would have happened. Never would have happened, she said. But HBO Max presented an opportunity because a Snyder Cut re-release in theaters offered no potential value to Warner Brothers, but it does offer potential value to HBO Max. That's why, like, once somebody suggested it, like one of the live viewers suggested it about 6 months ago on the show, say, hey, John, regarding Snyder Cut, what do you think about going to HBO Max? And I'm like, well, oh, wait, that's a great idea. And I became convinced that they should and would release the Snyder Cut on HBO Max. The one thing, though, that I got really wrong was I really thought they would and should just release it as is. I thought you don't even have to put in the money to finish it. You don't need to bother finishing it. Just edit together all the footage that Snyder shot and don't do any post-production on it. Don't do CG. Just release it as it is. I think people would still love to see it even if you just release it as it is. And I never thought they would spend another dollar on it. I knew it was incomplete. I knew it wasn't finished. I knew a finished Snyder Cut did not exist. But I thought they could just release it as is. I never thought they'd spend another dollar on it, let alone up to $70 million to finish it. But therein, it has some value to HBO Max as a potential marketing tool. But no, if anything, I think it's the opposite. This will not give directors any more control over franchise films, nor should it. Because you can't give somebody too much control when they're not directing the next one, right? You need somebody overseeing everything who understands how all the dots connect. When you just let a director go and do whatever they want to do with like no overall plan, you get the Star Wars sequels. I love The Force Awakens. I like The Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker, not so much. But overall, you can just tell there was no overall plan. So no, especially in the MCU. Like, you want to talk about studio interference? There is no place that has more studio interference than the MCU. But it works. Kevin Feige keeps very tight control over the MCU, and he needs to. Because while you may have, I don't know, let me pick one here. Let's say just because you have the Russo brothers directing one thing, well, that's great. Peyton Reed's got to direct another movie down the line, and you can't let the Russo brothers do something in this movie that's going to screw up what Peyton Reed is trying to do in this other movie he's got coming in 8 months. Or another movie that's coming out in 3 months. You need to have somebody over top of that keeping a close eye on things. So in franchise films, no. The directors need to be able to work with the studio and whoever the studio head is to come up with the plan and make sure, and then have a studio head that clearly lays out for their, like, whether it's a Peyton Reed, it's Kevin Feige sitting down with Peyton Reed and saying, okay, look, coming out of this movie, we need to have this in place, and this in place. And make sure you don't do this, or this, because that will contradict something we're trying to do later on. And then once all those guidelines are laid out and all those parameters are set, then Kevin Feige says, now that you and I have a clear understanding of what you can do, what you can't do, and where I need this movie to end off, now that we have that clear understanding, you go nuts. As long as you work within these parameters, within these guidelines, you go nuts. But stay within those guidelines, or else you're going to mess up my franchise. And I think the Kevin Feige model is what's going to dominate a little bit more and more when it comes to franchise films. So no, I don't think it's going to give any more of a say or control than they existingly have. If anything, Kevin Feige's model is going to become more and more of the norm, I think. I think it's going to become more and more of the norm. All right. Mr. Lara writes, John, love your show. Thank you so much. When you do finally move to Seattle, what will be the biggest disadvantage as it relates to your show, if any? For example, not being able to go to red carpet premieres. Do you foresee any changes coming to your show once you move? You know, here's the thing. When I started doing the John, well, actually even longer before that, going even back to as I was ending my time at AMC, I started going to less and less press viewings. I started going to less and less press screenings. I stopped doing press junkets. Like, I used to go to all the press junkets because I thought, oh my God, it's so cool. I get to sit down in a room with the movie stars. Ooh. But I got over that pretty quick. You start to, after you've done about 70 or 80 of those, you start realizing this is actually just boring as hell. It felt glamorous for a minute, but then you realize it's actually not. It's actually a grind, and I don't need it. And nobody watches these press junket interviews anyway. So I started, separating myself from it. I started getting other staff to go and cover those if they wanted to. And then I started going to less and less premieres, and I started going less. And really, especially when I started doing the John Campea Show, I started going to less and less of the press screenings too. And honestly, I think in the 3 or 4 months prior to the pandemic breakout, I think I might have gone to 3 or 4 press screenings. I mean, I got invited to a lot of them, but I just started going to less and less of them. It's just not worth my time. Now, I made exceptions for like Marvel films. Yeah, I wanted to be at Marvel premieres because they were big and audacious and fun and had a great atmosphere. And I really enjoyed going to them. But for the most part, I started skipping out on a lot of the other premieres. I just, not that they weren't cool. It's just that it didn't really do anything for me. When I can just wait till later, walk 15 minutes up the street, go to my AMC Burbank 16 and go watch the movie there. It was a lot easier. So honestly, no, I'm to the point now in my show where there is no need for me to be in Los Angeles. The only reason I'm in Los Angeles, obviously the primary reason is my wife, but is that I've got friends here. Okay. Professionally, though, there is nothing that's keeping me here in LA. I mean, I have Aaron come in once in a while, but even then, like most of the time when I have Rob on the show, he'll come in once in a while, but we've gotten into the routine where I just Skype Rob in, even though he just lives, a 15, 20-minute drive away in Pasadena. We most of the time, we just Skype him in. I do admit I prefer having him in studio because there's something more about our dynamic when we're actually in the same room together, but for the most part, we've just been doing it by Skype. So for me, as far as the John Campea Show goes, whenever we get around to moving out to Seattle, which will probably be like October, November, I really don't think much is going to change as far as how I do my show. And there's not really any drawbacks for me when it comes to the show. So yeah, anyway, thanks for the question. That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. All right, next up, Dropkick Aggie writes, there are smaller theater chains opening up in Texas. I saw Invisible Man last weekend, and damn, it was great. With larger chains not opening soon and potentially failing, do you see the industry moving towards smaller regional theaters and chains? No. The smaller, even they need the bigger chains to exist. The smaller regional stuff needs the bigger chains to exist, and they will. And Regal, by the way, we did talk last week on the show. Regal has announced that they're going to be open in July. Regal is opening their theaters in July. Cinemark, the third largest theater chain in the States, is going to start in stages, but they're going to start opening their theaters in June. Like in 2 weeks, they're going to start opening their theaters. AMC is also going to be open up again by July, or at least in the midst of July. They'll be open in time for Tenet. Now, whether or not AMC is able to stay in business, we'll have to wait and see. But it's not like the movie theater industry was failing. No, AMC was becoming profitable. They had done all this expansion, got their A-list up and running. They were starting to make good money. And then the pandemic hit. And all of a sudden, they've gone months with zero revenue. A business can't sustain that. Especially not a business that has all these huge brick and mortar physical locations and blah, blah, blah. It's rough, but no, I don't think we'll see a move towards smaller regional circuits. I don't think so, but it's great that we are starting to get some of these smaller movie theaters opening back up first. It's really, really good to see. And going to see Invisible Man is a good one to get your movie going kickoff with. That's a really good one. All right. Simon Blakemore writes, I watched Mudbound, loved Mudbound. I watched Mudbound on Netflix, and I thought it was really good about two men, one black, the other white, return home from World War II to work on a farm in rural Mississippi where they struggle to deal with racism, adjusting to life after war. Any movie, hold on a second here, let me just bring it up. Any movie Is that the one with Cillian Murphy? Hold on a second. Wait for it to open up. Here we go. It's the one directed by Dee Reese. No, it's Jason Clarke. It wasn't Cillian Murphy. Sorry, Jason Clarke. Mary J. Blige, Carey Mulligan, Jonathan Banks. Love John. I was just watching a Parks and Rec episode the other night, the one where Jonathan Banks shows up, where he's what's his name's dad? Oh, what's Leslie's character's Ben's dad? Anyway, that was really cool. Anyway, yes, actually really enjoyed this film. Surprisingly, really did enjoy this film. And I love movies that tackle issues like that. So that's a good one. Good recommendation, Simon. All right. Jaron Morris writes, I'm a huge Last of Us supporter and can't say much about Last of Us truly worthy of the name Last of Us. Graphics are outstanding. Controls are wonderful. Well done. Big improvement from the first one. On June 12th, I'll be able to talk about the story, but thumbs up. Nice. Yeah, I remember you saying you were going to get an early copy to play on that. That's good to hear. A lot of people got very upset because certain things leaked, certain plot points leaked about Last of Us 2 that got everybody all upset. And I'll admit, I didn't think the leaks sounded very good either. But what I tried to tell everybody who wrote into the show was, everybody just calm down. You don't know the context of those plot point leaks. And of course, the example I would give is that if you found out before Endgame came out that, oh yeah, they find Thanos in the first 10 minutes of the movie and they cut off his head, you'd be pissed. You'd be like, no way. They kill Thanos in the first 10 minutes. He's been the big bad of the MCU. You cannot kill him in the first 10 minutes. This is BS. Blah, blah. We would have been really upset because we would have heard that information out of the context of the movie itself. But what happened? We went to go see the movie. It's like, oh, and it makes much more sense. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Last of Us 2. Maybe it is. The leaks are as bad as they seem to be. Maybe. But it's not worth getting worked up over yet until we get the game. Once we get the game and we see it, then let's see. Apparently, Jaron, you really enjoyed it, though. So let's see how everybody else does. And once those reviews start coming out in June the 12th. Thanks for sharing, man. All right. Undead Sick 83 writes, hey, John, there has been so much development hell lately with the Star Wars franchise that I can't even use the Force anymore to create patience. There is only so long you can string the fans along before they demand results. You're going to make a Cassian Andor series, hopefully features Thrawn. I don't see the need for that, but give it to us. You're going to create an Obi-Wan Kenobi miniseries, deliver the goods. You're going to make another series with the female lead, freaking do it already. Thoughts? Well, yeah, but look, the Obi-Wan drama picked up prior to the pandemic and everything too. But then you got to remember, we've been in like a couple of months of absolute lockdown, right? Like of no movement, no advancement, no production happening whatsoever. So it's been tough. It's been hard. So let's cut it some slack there. But yes, the official announcements, like you get on stage at D23, we're doing Obi-Wan, it's coming out this time, and then it gets derailed. Still happening, but it got derailed. Then, yay, we're doing Cassian Andor, and they bring everybody out on stage. Yay, we're doing Cassian Andor, and then nothing. How about you get on stage and make announcements when you've got things locked down? How about that? I mean, that's because you're right. It's getting a little bit tiring as a Star Wars fan. Now, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, if it's any indication of, if Mandalorian's any indication of the type of quality that they're bringing, and remember, I thought the best director on Mandalorian, she's coming over and directing the entire Obi-Wan series. That bodes very well for that show because she directed, I believe, the best 2 episodes. They were for something good, but maybe don't make announcements until you really do have things locked in. Like, hey, if you're not happy with the script, don't make announcements about it at D23. You know, it's just, it is what it is. All right, let's see here. Carolina 29593 just tipped in $20 to be supportive of the show. Thank you, Carolina. Appreciate that very much. It's really kind of you. All right, next up, we've got another one from Undead Sick 83 who writes, you're going to make a cast. Oh, no, that was from there. Sorry about that. Oh, it was so important you even sent it in twice on Dead Sick. There you go. All right, Star Wars Rocks writes, hey, John, what do you think of Eric Wallace's statement, the show getting another 10 season, and he apparently had a dream about season 7, 8 will end? Since I don't even know what show we're talking about, I cannot answer that. Sorry about that, dude. Let's see. Calvin Severo Pano writes, John, I want to congratulate you. You are a great man. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You have my respect. You treated Robert with the honor and respect a friend deserves in bad moments. Others should be more like you. I'm tipping with more than I can because you're a beacon of hope today. Well, I appreciate that, Calvin. And listen, look, I think there are a couple things people need to understand. One, I think it was totally reasonable. Look, when you understand, like, get your dogma out of here for a second. When you understand the climate we are in right now, saying things like, when you have, you know, a couple of white dudes who see a black kid jogging through the neighborhood, so they decide to get some guns and track him down in their trucks and then shoot him. It's like, yeah, he might have been there to cause trouble. We should shoot him. When you live in that type of environment, saying the things that Robert said are not just a bad idea, it's irresponsible. And I tell you that because nobody agrees with that more than Robert. You know, Robert, so you got to, like, the people who get upset, like, I see all these people saying, oh, people who got upset with what Robert said are stupid. No, it wasn't stupid to look at what he wrote and be upset. And because, by the way, not everybody knows, like, I looked at what Robert wrote, and the thing is, I can see through it because I know the man. I know that's not how he thinks. I know that's not what he believes. I know that because I know him. But to be fair to people who don't know him and don't know this is clearly just coming from a real place of outrage because he saw a 77-year-old black man, former police officer, shot by looters, left to die in the streets. He was incredibly distraught by that, of what he sees our culture becoming when that happens. When you know Robert, you can see through the words he typed and just see he's writing that out of anger and rage. That's not what he really writes. But to people who don't know Robert, how are they supposed to know that? All they saw was somebody that they don't know writing things like shoot to kill in an environment where there are people shooting to kill. It's irresponsible. And once Robert, you know, took a step back and took a breath and he really looked at what he wrote and then looked at it from the perspective of, what if somebody I didn't know read this? And he looked at it again. And that's what he said to me. He's like, what if somebody, he looked at it and saying, what if somebody who didn't know me read this? Let's say I'm somebody who didn't know me and I'm going to read it with fresh eyes right now. And then he went, oh, yeah. And I thought his apology video was great. I really do. I thought his apology video was right on point. Listen, a bad movie once said, try not to judge somebody based on their worst moment. If everybody knew your worst moment, you would be canceled. It's just the truth. Whoever you are listening right now, if your worst moment was on display for everybody to see, you'd be canceled. And listen, yeah, if what Robert wrote was consistent with what I know of him as a person, if that's how he really talked all the time and that's what he really thought, and he was like, no, let's just shoot everything. If he was that, well, then my response would be a little bit different. But I know it's not. And so to me, listen, I know Robert. He hates violence. He's been very vocal on his show, on my show, about how distraught he is about the racial inequality in our culture and our society. We know, those of us who follow Rob, we know him. We know him. There are others who may not know him as well. And you've got to take a breath and go, okay, I get why people were really upset. And I do. I get why people were upset. So I'm not condemning anybody who were upset, mad, angry, when they read it. I don't blame them, because if I were in their shoes and I didn't know Rob, maybe I would have felt the same. It was a dumb thing to write. It was a dangerous thing to write. It was an irresponsible thing to write. And he regrets it. And he apologized for it. So what am I left to do? What are you left to do when somebody in a really bad moment does something completely out of character, doesn't beat a puppy to death, but says something stupid, immediately regrets it, and walks back what they said? What are you supposed to do? Do you cancel them? Or do you go, shit, man, we've all been there. We've all been there. It doesn't excuse what you did. It doesn't make it okay. but we've all been there. And I know that's not you. To me, it's not a hard choice. To me, it's an easy choice. And I understand, and I make that choice knowing that not everybody's going to agree with me. And that's fine. That's fine. I have to make choices all the time that people don't agree with me on. That's fine. I don't lose any sleep over that. But it is what I believed was the right thing to do. But again, because I already know there are some people going, oh, Campea is saying that the way Christian Harloff handled it was the wrong way to handle it. I'm not saying that. As a matter of fact, Christian and Harloff and I were on the phone together last night. Listen, you got to understand something about Harloff. Harloff, he always wants to try to do, listen, all of us want to do the right thing. We just don't always know what the right thing is. And sometimes we got to try to figure it out. And sometimes we do it right. Sometimes we make mistakes, whatever. Harloff always is trying to do what he thinks might be the right thing. And I'm going to tell you right now, what Rob tweeted out last night put Harloff in a situation that he did not ask to be in. Christian didn't wake up going, wow, I really hope one of my Schmodown competitors puts out something on Twitter that puts me in the line of fire where I have to make some terrible decision that I don't want to make. You think Christian Harloff woke up yesterday thinking that? You think Christian Harloff woke up yesterday saying, wow, I really hope somebody else does something that has nothing to do with me that puts me in an awkward situation today? He didn't. He didn't. You know, and listen, this is something Robert and I have talked about as well. And Robert feels terrible about this. Robert feels terrible that he put Christian in a situation that Christian did not ask to be in. All right. Christian wants to make shows about movie trivia. He doesn't want to get involved in this kind of nonsense. He doesn't want to get involved in this nonsense. Christian and I came to two different conclusions, but I'm going to tell you right now, Christian made the decision that he thought was the right decision for his business, was the right decision for the other people that he has to work with, and he tried to handle it in the best way that he could for Robert. And I respect that. I respect that. Do I think Christian should have let Robert go? No. I think maybe he should have suspended him from the league. I think they should have done some more work. I certainly don't think they should have made a decision within 2 or 3 hours of the whole thing going down. I don't think anybody makes their best decisions when you're trying to rush to something in the first 2 or 3 hours of something like that happening. But I'm going to tell you right now, even in the midst of doing that, Christian Harloff is the type of guy who he is going to try to do, because what is the moral North Star here for me to do? And maybe he comes to a decision that you would do. Maybe he'll come to a decision that you wouldn't do. But his motivation is trying to do what's right by the people he's involved with, by the people he's working with, and by the people around him. And sometimes that means he's going to do exactly what I would do. Sometimes that means he's going to do something different that I would do. But I'm going to tell you this right now. Christian Harloff, twice, he and I got on the phone. I believe we twice got on the phone last night. And it was tearing him up. It was tearing him up. He didn't ask to be in this situation. And he made a decision that he didn't want to have to make in an environment, in a situation that Robert created. And maybe some other people involved over there helped stoke the fires and got it running too. But the reality is it was a situation that Robert created. And it threw Christian into an environment and into a dilemma that he had no desire to be a part of. But there he was. And I'm going to tell you right now, as somebody who was on the phone with Christian last night, he was agonizing over that. He was agonizing over it. And he did the best he could. Just like me, I'm doing the best I can. I make the decisions, the best decisions that I can. Right? And maybe 2 years from now, it'll turn out that Christian made the right decision and I made the wrong decision. Maybe. I don't know. I'll live with that. I'll deal with that when it happens. But I just see Christian taking a lot of heat today. And while I appreciate saying, well, Campea, you handled it right and Christian handled it wrong, Part of me, of course, is going, well, of course I did. No, the reality is, for everybody who's like just piling on Christian, you got to walk in his shoes, man. He's got responsibilities and he has people he's responsible for, and he's got larger responsibilities than most people do. And he's just trying to do what everybody else does in a situation that hit him like a truck coming in the wrong direction in traffic that he totally was not expecting and didn't want any part of. He made a different decision than me, but he's just doing the best he can. And listen, I'll tell you what, me talking with my wife yesterday, you think I wanted to be in that situation? Here I am last night, and Rob and I also talked today. He knows this. Here I am last night. Ann and I just got Monopoly on our Nintendo Switch, and we had a couple of friends come over, and we're going to sit down and play some Monopoly and have some fun, and we start our game, and all of a sudden, my phone starts blowing up. It's like, oh my God, Robert, what are you going to do about Robert? I'm like, what the hell? Did Rob say something dumb on Twitter? Whatever, I'll deal with that later. And then my phone rings, and it's Christian Harloff commenting to me because, did you see what Rob wrote? And I'm like, no, what's going on? And do you think I wanted to be in that situation? No. No, I didn't, sir. No, sir, I did not. Did not want to be in that situation. And there was a part of me that resented Robert a little bit for the very fact that he does my show with me. All of a sudden, now I'm dragged into it. And people are coming to me, John, you have to address this. What are you going to do, John? What are you? And like, I didn't. Listen, I do a freaking YouTube show from home so I can talk about movies. I am not interested in this kind of bullshit. I'm not interested in this. Christian was in the same situation. Christian wants to do movie trivia. He wants to do a morning talk show talking about fun, ridiculous stuff. He didn't start up a thing, so he had to deal with this type of crap, and yet there he was, and he did the best he could. He did the best he could. He didn't do what I would have done. Okay. But I'm telling you, he did the best he could. So I just want to say to everybody who is giving Harloff and his ilk a hard time, cut him some slack, man. Because you have the luxury of not being unwittingly, undesiring, thrown into a situation that you did not ask for. Like he did in this environment, in this situation. It's easy for everybody to sit back and criticize what Christian did when you have no idea the pressure that comes along with that. You have no idea what it is. And listen, that's all you can do when you're in a position of leadership. You make a decision. You try to make the best decision you can. He was getting a lot of pressure from different angles. He made a decision, the best one that he thought he could at the time. To gang pile up on him for that, I don't think that's reasonable. It's okay to disagree with his decision. It's okay to think, if you think he made the wrong decision, it's okay to think he made the wrong decision, but to paint it like he had some moral failure, it's easy to start throwing around terms like that when it's a situation you'll never have to be in. So anyway, I looked at the situation one way. I clearly saw that this was not Robert's real character. This was not what Robert thinks. What he wrote down was not reflective of who he is and what it is he actually believes. I know for a fact he actually believes quite the opposite. And so for me, it wasn't that difficult of a decision. It was tell him straight up, man to man, you effed up, dude. That was a stupid thing to write. It was an irresponsible thing to write. And he knows it, and he regrets it, and he apologized. Okay, so what do you do from there? Cancel him? No. So, but that's the decision I made, being put in a very difficult spot. Christian made the decision he made, being put in a very difficult spot. And I think you just got to cut some people some slack. I just think you got to cut people some slack when they're in a tremendously difficult situation. Anyway. That's my thought on that. I probably went on about that for too long, so I apologize for that. All right, next up, I tried my best writes. Hey, John, if somebody doesn't want homosexuality promoted or celebrated excessively in films because they truly believe in the Bible, which denounces it several times, that person isn't a bigot. They're simply a Bible-believing Christian. Thoughts? All right, I'm not going to get dragged into this to a great degree. Let me just say this. The Bible talks 7 times more about heterosexual immorality than it does about homosexuality. 7 times more. So I would say this to anybody who calls themselves a Christian that wants to say that to me. I would also say, fine, then you can't watch any movie or TV show that has any sin in it. None. Any show that shows anybody sleeping with another person outside of marriage, you can't watch it. If you do, you're a hypocrite. Any show that has somebody working on a Sabbath, you can't watch it because you're being a hypocrite. Any show that has somebody wearing clothes made of 2 different types of fabric, you're being a hypocrite if you watch it. You can't watch it. I'm just going to say, if you're going to say I can't watch that because it has things in it, it celebrates something in it as being okay that I don't think is okay, well then, okay. Then apply that to everything in the Bible. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the Bible, you may not know this. I find most Christians don't actually know, because I actually find most Christians don't know actually anything about the Bible. But the thing is, the Bible talks excessively more about heterosexual immorality than it does about homosexual immorality. So if you want to draw that line and say, I can't watch something in a movie that has bad things, well, then you can't watch any movie. Or not any movie, but very, 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 very few movies that play in theaters or on television. You can't watch those stories. I'm not going to go into it any more than that. I could go on for hours about that. I could get into a big theological discourse, on this, and I could talk about this for a long time. I went to Bible college, so I could talk about this for a long time. I'm not going to get dragged into that, though. I would just simply say this. If you want to draw that line, fine, then you better be consistent about it and not be a hypocrite about it. Because if you're going to watch any show or movie where the lead character lies, has sex outside of marriage, wears, again, clothing made of 2 different types of fabric, works on the Sabbath, whatever, if you're going to do any of that, then you got to throw all of that out of your viewing list as well. That's what I would say. Because if you're a Bible-believing Christian, then that's what you should do. That's my thought on that, at any rate. All right, next, move on here. Again, I could get dragged into that a lot more, but nobody else wants to hear me talk about that, so we'll move on here. James Argenta writes, I think Jai White would be a good Jon Stewart in the Green Lantern TV show. The show will most likely be done before he turns 60. He can save money on fights by having him fight without the ring a few times, and he is perfect age to mentor a 30-ish year old Green Lantern. Yeah, but now you're making up the movie or the show that is not necessarily the show they want to do. You don't go, well, let's cast Green Lantern first and then make up what our story is. You don't, that's the backwards way of doing things. You have your story and then you get the right actor who fits that story, what you're doing with that character in that story. You don't go, hey, let's get Michael Jai White and then write our story this way where he's an older Green Lantern now mentoring Lula. You don't start with who you're casting. You start with the story. You know what I mean? But listen, I think Aaron raised some good points. James, Aaron agrees with you. I think Aaron raised some good points about that on the show earlier today about, the possibility of Michael Jai White doing it and what you could possibly do with his character in that sort of a situation. I thought she raised some really good points. Listen, bottom line for me is I don't care. I love Michael Jai White. You put him in anything I'm going to be interested in. I would prefer to see him play a different type of comic book character where he can actually use his incredible on-screen martial arts skills. But hey, if they announced him as Green Lantern, sure, I'd be down. All right, DJ Info writes, I agree with you that Hal Jordan should be the first Green Lantern, but if you were in charge of DC and one of your staff says that we have to use Jon Stewart with the way the world is right now, and look what Marvel did with T'Challa, got to put more black heroes in, how would you respond? I mean, it's not a bad thing to say. I mean, because look, the reality is, yeah, if we're down with making a Green Lantern movie, and we think that using the Jon Stewart Green Lantern could have some real societal benefits doing it that way, I wouldn't look at Black Panther as the example. It would just be a good thing. I would listen. Even though I am the quintessential Green Lantern is Hal Jordan. You could do a Kyle Rayner Green Lantern. You could do a Jon Stewart Green Lantern. You could do a Guy Gardner Green Lantern. You could do those characters. So yeah, I mean, look, if you come with a good story, and they come with a good story for a Jon Stewart Green Lantern, I'm not going to go, well, I'm not interested because it's Guy Gardner, or I'm not interested because it's Jon Stewart. I'm not going to do that. If you come with a great story and a good, but you got to come with more than it's socially what we should do right now. You got to come into my office. If I'm the head of DC right now, you got to come into my office with something more than that. Come in with a really great story idea. And if you can come in with a great story idea and the cherry on top of it is it's more socially aware right now. Okay, if that's the cherry on top and not your basis. If the societal impact of the film is the cherry on top in your pitch and not the basis of the pitch, it can have merit. So yeah, I would look at it that way too. All right. Next up, Curtis Lopez writes, as much as we give Anakin crap for the infamous sand quote, he's right. Sand is annoying and it is coarse, rough, irritating, and it gets everywhere. Truly one of the worst lines in cinematic history. But he's not wrong. You know what? No, I like sand. I like sand. Sand feels good between my toes. I enjoy sand, whether it's on the dry part of the beach, walking in the shallow water on the beach. I like sand. But yeah, a lot of people don't like it. All right, Tony Rodriguez writes, I feel bad for Robert and will hope for his return soon and will continue to support his channel. But in the meantime, can we get Chris Carr back on alternate days with Aaron? P.S. Thanks, Aaron, for getting me hooked on All Rise. I mean, yeah, wasn't her part on All Rise great? Anyway, it's a CBS show that Aaron was on this past year. No, what Chris Carr is right now isolating because her husband, Logan, he works in a job that has him surrounded by a lot of various people all the time. And then he comes home to Chris. Chris right now is self-isolating at home. And I think she's being incredibly socially responsible by doing it. I tried bringing Chris in over Skype once before. It didn't work out so well. So Chris will be back once everything's good. And hopefully that's looking like it might be sooner rather than later. So once Chris is available to come in a little bit more, we'll get back into getting Chris on, at least a little bit. We'll work on getting her in there, but that's what's keeping her off the show right now is her isolating because of the social distancing stuff, because she's so responsible, which is great. All right, next up. John Early writes, I'd like to know your thoughts on the James Bond films Diamonds Are Forever and Moonraker. I kind of enjoy them, even though they are a bit lackluster. I've talked about Moonraker before. I'm not a fan of Moonraker. I got to admit, I am not a fan of Moonraker. I love Roger Moore Bond. Don't get me wrong. I do love Roger Moore Bond. The suave James Bond, the Roger Moore Bond. I love that Bond. Moonraker, to me, is probably my least favorite Bond film. Just being honest, Moonraker, to me, is probably my least favorite Bond film. Diamonds Are Forever, though, maybe, which is, of course, is the Sean Connery Bond. Diamonds Are Forever, though, is also not great. Don't get me wrong. I get a bit of a kick out of it, though. Maybe that's because a bunch of it takes place in Vegas, whatever. I like Diamonds Are Forever. Not one of the better Bond films by any stretch. Definitely not. But I certainly like it more than Moonraker. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Next up, Boston McClellan writes, Hey, John, greetings from San Diego. I love San Diego. I watched Space Force on Netflix, and I have to say, what a waste of potential. Show had only a few laughable moments and became more of a boring drama show. Was really hyped to see it, but I felt let down. Did you watch? Ann and I and our friend Ryan sat down and watched the first episode. And I didn't think it was bad. The word I'll use is underwhelmed. I was underwhelmed by Space Force. At least, granted, I only watched the first episode. But upon watching the first episode, the end of the first episode, I did not feel the need of watch next episode, click. I didn't feel the need to click on the next episode. So I kind of ditched on it. Now, I will probably go back and give it another shot. I'll probably try episode 2 and see if it gets any better for me. But my only exposure to Space Force right now was one episode, so I can only speak to the one episode, but I was underwhelmed. It had its moments, had a couple of moments. I really do like the dynamic of the relationship between the John Malkovich character and the Steve Carell character. I did like that dynamic, but that was pretty much the only thing I really dug, to be honest with you. So underwhelmed is the phrase I would use. But who knows? Maybe I'll think better if I watch it a little bit more. John McKinney writes, what do you think is the biggest miscasting when it comes to comic book movies? And who do you think should have played that role? Well, I don't do X actor and X role. stuff at all. There's no construction stuff that. For me, it was Julian McMahon as Dr. Doom. I'm going to tell you right now, I thought he was a great casting for that, and I'll tell you why in a second. As Dr. Doom, Jeremy Irons or Alan Rickman should have played Dr. Doom, in my opinion. It wouldn't have made the movie any better. Listen, Julian McMahon's a really good actor, actually. He's a really good actor. The problem with Dr. Doom was not his... Actually, I thought he was I thought he fit very well the image I would have of a Victor Von Doom. I thought he looked really good. And his acting is top-notch. Now, is Alan Rickman or Jeremy Irons? Yeah, these are two of the great actors of our generation. Of course, they're a little bit better, but it's easy just to go, I think insert name of one of the great actors of our generation should have played that role. Well, of course, that's easy to say. That's easy to say. But here's the thing. It wouldn't have made the movie any better. Because the story would have been exactly the same. The lines would have been exactly the same. The things that Dr. Doom said and did would have been exactly the same. It just would have been a different actor playing it. Now, maybe that's different if it wasn't a strong actor, like Julian McMahon is a strong actor. If you had put in a bad actor in there playing the role, and their acting is what sunk the character, yeah, then we can talk about other alternatives. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was the script. And there's not much coming back from that. When the script's that bad and it's that badly directed, and I'm not saying, what's his name? Why am I freezing on the name of the guy who directed? He also directed Training Day, or Ride Along. Directed Ride Along. Hold on a second. Let me just bring it up here. Which one was it? All right. The 2005 Fantastic Four was directed by Tim Story. Right, Tim Story. I'm not saying Tim Story is a bad director. All right. I'm not saying he's a bad director. Did he direct Ride Along? I thought he directed Ride Along. Yeah, he did direct Ride Along. He's done something. I like the first Ride Along. I didn't like the second one. I Think Like a Man. I like that. He's done some things that I enjoyed. But for Tim Story, Fantastic Four was his bad couple of days at the office. It doesn't matter who you put in that role. It wasn't going to be any better. To me, the worst miscast, and you could, when it comes to, well, who should have played the role, insert the name of almost anybody. I don't know. Listen, I've never been a fan. Let me just bring this up here. Where'd we go? Come on, here we go. I've never been a fan of the Kristen Dunst Mary Jane. For whatever reason, unlike McMahon, who, when you looked at him, I saw Victor Von Doom. I really did. I thought, here's a Victor Von Doom type. And the way he carried himself, I thought was very Von Doomish. I was down with that. While Kristen Dunst is a very good actress, I just thought the approach they took with her in that character just didn't fit. Everything from her mannerisms to the way she carried herself, and I just didn't think she was a good fit for that. And I think she's a good actress. So, I don't know. There's that one for me, at any rate. All right, next up. Dalton Burdett writes, "Hey, John, thanks for giving everyone a place to escape into the magical world of cinema. Just wanted to say that Gangster Squad is a huge guilty pleasure film of mine. It was basically a much cheesier version of The Untouchables. So bad, I love it." So what happened was, we talked about Monster Squad earlier in the show today, because we were talking about Ryan Gosling. Let me just bring this up. Oh, sorry. Oh, you're saying Gangster Squad. Gangster Squad. So we brought up Gangster Squad. Let me just bring up the thing here, because we were talking about Ryan Gosling on the show earlier today, and Aaron said, "Man, he's just never done a bad movie." And I'm like, point of order, Gangster Squad, directed by Ruben Fleischer, who was actually a director I actually kind of like. But Ruben Fleischer's done some stuff I quite enjoy. Gangster Squad was terrible, but listen to this cast: Josh Brolin, fantastic. Sean Penn, fantastic. Emma Stone, fantastic. Ryan Gosling, fantastic. Mark Brandt, fantastic. It was an incredible cast. It's been a long time since I saw a movie I was that disappointed in. Because I went in, for those of you who were watching back in the AMC days, I went into Gangster Squad thinking this movie is going to be a Best Picture contender. That's how high my expectations were. I'm thinking this movie is a best picture contender written all over it. This is going to be one of the, if not the best film of the year. Oh my God, it was so bad. But you know what, Dalton? That is the description of a guilty pleasure. A movie that everybody else thinks is terrible, but you get a kick out of it. We all have our guilty pleasure movies, man. And if Gangster Squad is yours, then Gangster Squad is yours. But yeah, man, I got to tell you, woo, I was disappointed in that movie. I had much, much higher expectations for it. All right, next up, Fat Yoshi writes, hey, John, do you think theaters probably meant ever. Do you think theaters ever had a plan in case of a pandemic or any other event where people could not enter a movie theater for a prolonged period of time? Thanks. I don't think there is a plan to be had. There's nothing you can prepare for. When you're a movie theater industry, there is no plan to be had of, we can't be open for business for months at a time. That's like saying, what's your plan for not having air for 3 hours? Go, what's your plan? There is no plan. You die. It's just, there's nothing else to discuss. You can't have air for 3 hours. What's your plan? I die. That's just it. There's no plan. When you are a massive place that has hundreds of giant buildings and facilities and structures spread across the country in North America and the world, and you're suddenly stuck in a situation where you got to close your doors for 3 months and you can't generate $1 of revenue. I don't think there's any planning for that. You die or you suffer greatly. I mean, yeah, so I don't think, no, they didn't have a plan for it because there's nothing you can do, you know. I mean, you can plan for what happens if the studios can't put out any movies for 3 months. Okay, well, we can make plans for that. Let's put this type of content on. Let's show live events in our theaters. Let's rent them out to do this. Well, but what do you plan for that your doors have got to be shut for 3 months? That's heavy. That's heavy. I don't know that there is. So no, I don't think they had a plan for that. That's like saying, okay, what's our plan if we're at our Sunday picnic and a nuclear explosion goes off in the middle of the Sunday picnic? What's our plan? You die. There's no planning around that. There's no strategizing around that. You can't have, the only thing is you cannot have a nuclear explosion go off in the middle of your Sunday picnic. That's the plan. And if it does happen, well, then too bad. I think, and that's that. This whole pandemic for the movie theater chain has been the nuclear explosion going off on their Sunday picnic. There's just no planning for it. It just is. It's just buckle down and hope you can survive it. I mean, that's all they have left for themselves to do. All right. Someone writes, following up on my Batman versus Freeze short film question, that question was addressed earlier in the John Campea Show live earlier this morning, by the way. Following up on my Batman versus Freeze short film question, don't you think lots more people would have seen Birds of Prey if there was a 7-minute Batman short? Not really, no. I know would who say Suicide Squad just for the 2 to 3 Batman scenes. Even Toy Story has done shorts. Yeah, but here's the thing about Toy Story and their shorts. The shorts, people don't go to watch the shorts. The shorts are a great bonus. You know, I talked about the Pixar short films. I love the tradition of a short film playing in front of a Pixar film. I love that tradition. But I didn't go to see Onward so I could see the Maggie short film in front of it. That was a great bonus, and I really enjoyed it, but that's not why I went to go see Onward. I didn't go see, what was the one that had Bao in front of it? I can't, maybe it was Toy Story. Was it Toy Story 4 that had Bao in front of it? Anyway, I wasn't like, well, I'm not going to go see Toy Story 4. Oh, but it's got Bao in front of it. Okay, I'll go buy a ticket and go then. Like, you know what I mean? To me, it's an added bonus. It's a nice thing. I don't think a lot more people would have, in any sort of significant numbers, would have bought their $12 movie ticket to go watch a 5-minute fight scene between Mr. Freeze and Batman. And again, you also cheapen the character. You're cheapening the character by just throwing Batman into a short film at the beginning of a movie. I feel like you're cheapening the character when you do that. So I see where you're coming from. And I personally enjoy short films in front of movies. I get a kick out of them, but they're not the feature event. They're not what people actually spend the money to go and watch. It's a great added bonus, but I don't think it would have turned, Birds of Prey into a $700 million movie. Like magically, it wouldn't have doubled its box office for a quick 5-minute short. Maybe there were a couple people who would have gone, but I don't think it would have changed the numbers all that much. But I don't know, man. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I just feel like it wouldn't have changed things much. And I think you cheapen the character a little bit when you do. That's my fear. And you know how I feel about cheapening the holy trinity of the DC universe, Batman, Superman, or Wonder Woman. I don't like that, but that's just my thing. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I don't think so, but you could be onto something. All right. An anonymous viewer, tip $100. Thank you so much, anonymous viewer, for supporting the channel on that level. We really appreciate it, dude. All right. I truly appreciate the work and content you provide. The Zoom on Sunday was so clear. This is a Patreon supporter. We had a Zoom open Patreon supporter online meeting on Sunday, and I loved it. It was great. We had a bunch of the Patreon supporters hop on Zoom all at the same time, and we talked for like an hour and a half. It was great. Anyway, the Zoom on Sunday was incredible, and I hope we do it again. Admittedly, I don't always agree with your view, but I respect the hell of it and always come back for more. Well, I appreciate that so much. And listen, that's the point. Listen, I am doing my job wrong if I have many people on here who always agree with my opinion. Then I'm doing something wrong. Because all of our opinions are unique. So therefore, if I have a ton of people that say they always agree with my opinion, then that means subconsciously I'm just saying things that I think people will agree with. And I don't ever want to be that. My job on this show, you've heard me say it before, my job on the John Campea Show is not to say things you agree with. And my job is not to convince you to agree with me. My job is to give you my honest opinion on something and explain and lay out my opinion in such a way that it helps my viewers sharpen their perspective, whether they agree with me or disagree with me. See, I consider it a win. If somebody disagrees with me, let's say there's somebody who doesn't like Man of Steel, right? If somebody hears out my explanation about why I love Man of Steel so much, and they walk away from that really sharpening why they dislike Man of Steel, I consider that my job done. Then I've done my job, because my job isn't to convince people to agree with me. My job is to give my honest opinion and give it in such a way that it helps the viewer sharpen their perspective about why they agree with me or why they disagree with me. Because that's the beautiful thing about films. We all have different perspectives. So I don't want people to agree with me all the time. That's not the point. The point is, hopefully, I'm giving my opinion in such a way that it expands your perspective on why other people may think differently than you, or help you expand your perspective about why you do agree with me. Either or, it's all good. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for supporting the channel at level. Thank you for being a Patreon supporter as well, whoever you are. And we're going to have another Zoom meeting this Sunday. We're going to do another Zoom meeting this Sunday. I hope you get to join us again for that. For those of us who are Patreon supporters, thank you again for that, man. All right. Otto from 3 Men in a Basement writes, "Hey John, totally respect why you were off the past 2 days. Instead, I found Galaxy Force and have been absolutely loving it. So funny. Have you watched it yet?" I have honestly never heard of Galaxy Force. Hold on a second here. Let me, Galaxy Force. Galaxy Force, a 1988 action adventure. Oh, is it a video game? Oh, it's a video game. Okay, so I'm going to guess you're not talking about... I'm not sure what... I am not familiar with Galaxy Force. So sorry about that. I'm not even finding anything on it except for this video game. Sorry about that, Otto. All right. Next time, let me know. Give me some specifics about what that is. All right. Star Wars Rocks writes, 1 of 2. Hi again, John. What do you think of Lucasfilm reportedly liking for an actor to play a live-action Ezra Bridger for a Disney Plus, as reported by Screen Rant earlier? Their source... Okay, so it's not reported by Screen Rant. They're just repeating what somebody else said. Their source was the Illuminati. I don't know how trustworthy that is, because the Illuminati article didn't actually have a source. Listen, my thing is always this. If it's not coming from the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline, real outlets, then don't take it seriously. If it's true and real, and 95 times out of 100, it's not. If it's true and real, it will eventually be picked up by the major trades, and then it's worth talking about. But if we spent our time talking about every little thing that Bob's Gas Station Movie Reviews.fart wrote, we would be constantly talking about things that weren't ever going to really happen and weren't real. So, and again, that's not me disparaging on, what's it called? Illuminati at all. For Wallline, I'm not familiar with them, but they might be a very, very fine site. That's all. But you know what I say, even if it's coming from me, right? I say, if I know something, I'll talk about it on my show if I know something. And we can talk about that on my show. But I always say, no other website should run with what I'm saying because I'm not the Hollywood Reporter. I'm not Deadline. I'm not Variety. You know, if and when, like my Nightwing thing, like the Ben Affleck thing, like the budget on Snyder Cut thing, if it's true, it will be picked up by them eventually, and then other places can talk about it. So I'm not disparaging at all what Illuminati is as a site, or the fact that, hey, we heard about this, and so we're talking about it on our site. That's fine. But it's not worth it for me to talk about on my site until it becomes verified by one of the actual legitimate trades. Once that happens, then we can discuss it. So until then, it's not worth discussing. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. All right, Joshua Richard writes, hey, John, with all the news about Batwoman, would it be cool to just make a Batman show instead of continuing Batwoman with a complete different character? A show where Bruce is more involved with Wayne Enterprises and raising Damian Wayne. I have no desire for that. I think it cheapens the Batman character. I really do. I think throwing a Batman CW show on, I think is a total waste of the character, and it cheapens the character. That's just my thought on it. I think it's great to do it for other characters in the DC universe. Do a Flash thing, do a Green Arrow thing. I think that's fine. But for I don't think they should never have brought Superman in. Because you guys know how I feel about the way CW treated their Superman character. They should never bring Batman in my opinion. I mean, yeah, they've already got someone who is Bruce, but they shouldn't touch Batman. It just cheapens the character. It cheapens the IP. So I hope they never do that. Keep Batman and Superman on the big screen and keep them there exclusively. That's my thought. You don't have to agree, which is fine. But that's my thought on it. That's my feeling on it because I do not like their track record right now. All right. An anonymous viewer writes, It's sad I know this, but the lead actor in Iron Eagle chose to do another movie at the same time as part 2, hence The Dead Doug. Also, they bring the character back in Iron Eagle 4, but not the same actor. By the way, Iron Eagle predates Top Gun by 4 months. The thing about the actor, so you had to have known that the actor wasn't going to be available before you even wrote the script, right? It's not like they found it. It's not like the script was done and then they found out last second he couldn't be there. That changes the entire story. So why not just recast the actor? That's the thing that I don't understand. Why didn't they just recast the actor for Iron Eagle 2? If you had your story already, then just recast him. I don't understand why it was that difficult. Just recast him. It's not like this is Ben-Hur. This is like Iron Eagle. But anyway, that's just kind of my thoughts on that. All right, next up, we have a ZMG Ruler, and this is the last question that came in on the show this morning before the show ended. ZMG Ruler writes, showed my mom Man of Steel for the first time, and she enjoyed it. Awesome. I didn't know there was strong hate for this film until YouTuber Lindsay Ellis called it arbitrarily the worst film of that year. When did you realize there was strong level of hate for Man of Steel? Like 2 days after it came out. Like I did my Man of Steel review, loved it. I thought it was great. And then you start seeing other reviews come in and the other people just were not as happy with it. But again, that's the movies, man. Even a movie that you love, like the way I love Man of Steel, can have a lot of people that it just hits them a different way and they didn't like it. It dumbfounds me. It confuses me. I think it is a masterpiece of the comic book genre. I think it is one of the best comic book movies ever made. I certainly think it's the most underrated comic book movie ever made. But hey, even then, people aren't always going to have the same opinion, and that's cool. I can live with it. All right, guys, that will do it for this installment of the companion videos. We're now all caught up. Don't forget, guys, the John Campea Show returns again tomorrow. Listen, guys, seriously, thank you to everybody for sending in the questions, because you did two things. Number one, you gave us great fun things to talk about, but number two, you supported the channel while you did it, and all of us here at the John Campea Show, thank you guys very much for that. Don't forget, we'll be back again tomorrow with the John Campea Show, working on stories for that right now. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.